what would it be?
The testimony would be that these animals were clearly in the condition that the workers had passed by over and over again, had noticed them, and had not addressed the dire medical concerns that these piglets were facing. Effectively, from a factual perspective, these animals were abandoned constructively. In the same way that if you saw a...
How do you know that? I mean, what evidence would you be offering that you had knowledge of that?
So, for example, the piglets being in a state of starvation over an extended period of time, over 6 or 7 days, a piglet being about 1/6 or 1/7 the weight of the other piglets, with a very seriously injured leg, would be evidence that the workers who Smithfield has testified do walk through the farms 5 times a day. Mr. Topham himself said that he was walking through the farms. If they saw that piglet over and over again, saw that she was falling behind to the point that she was 1/6 the normal size, effectively and constructively, I think it would be reasonable for the jury to deem this animal as effectively abandoned. I will submit, to Your Honor, though, that point C is probably a stronger argument than point B. I think both of them are factual conclusions for the jury to make, and I think the jury is entitled to instruction.
Okay, well, give me more of your proffer as to B. Tell me, if you're allowed to testify, tell me what you would be saying. Yeah, I just need to make sure I understand that, and this is your opportunity to tell me before I have to hear some objections as to relevance or that type of thing. What is your proffer?
On subpoint C.
B.
On subpoint B.
And then we'll go to C.
Yeah, the testimony would be, we saw animals that were clearly in a state of neglect, that had been in the state of neglect for many, many days, and as a result of that, were effectively abandoned by the company. And in the same way that if you found...
You're saying that sometime in March, and I'm not going to talk about Mr. Picklesheimer, but you and some others went in under the cover of darkness, went into the buildings, and found piglets that were abandoned.
Effectively, as if they were in the garbage. It would be no different than if they're in the garbage and intended for the dumpster or landfill outside.
And so how did you go about that process?
Well, for one, we looked at the garbage and noticed that there were hundreds and hundreds of piglets in the garbage at just one farm of many at Smithfield Foods. We looked at the piglets and noticed that they were in a condition that was quite obvious and self-evident. And well, there's both video footage and photographs showing that the condition was quite bad immediately to all of us. And we were all stunned to see the condition they were in. And anyone who had been walking through the farm would immediately notice these piglets were both dramatically smaller than the other piglets and suffering from very serious injuries, including a foot injury that was causing one to be unable to walk properly. So even a momentary glance at the facility and at the created issue would have allowed someone to recognize that. Effectively, these animals were abandoned. Whether they were already in the dumpster or soon to be in the dumpster is sort of irrelevant, or to the extent it is relevant, I should say, it's a factual consideration for the jury to ascertain and not for us to determine as a matter of law.
And so you're telling me that you went in, you saw this, and that was the honest belief that you had the right then to take these piglets.
I did believe they're abandoned, effectively. And I've done this during daylight too. And when they're abandoned animals, when they're animals in a dumpster, in a dead pile, and you ask the owner, do you care if we take this? Basically 100% of the time they don't care. Because again, it's a liability for the farm for there to be a living, sick, or injured animal among the other animals who could potentially get diseases from these animals.
Why not do that at midday on that day? Why wait until night?
Yeah, and that relates to the emergency care these animals needed. They were rushed to an emergency vet instantly. The first place we went was, well, first to a sanctuary, and then to a vet right after that. And there was no time. We did report this shortly thereafter, and we have had on many other occasions where owners are present and staff members are present. We have asked them. In this case, because we're doing in part an undercover investigation, we're not there just to find a piglet in a dead pile or find a piglet in a state where they were starving to death. We were there to investigate criminal animal abuse. We didn't notify them immediately because it would have ruined our investigation, which was still in the process. I mean, it took many months for us to compile all our information, our documents, submit them to the New York Times, to the point that the Times felt they were comfortable with publishing the results of our investigation. So,
any reason you didn't ask the sheriff to accompany you and said, hey, we're doing an undercover investigation, come out with us?
We did after the fact. After the investigation occurred, and the reason we did that was because we had a concern that the company has enormous influence in this county and frankly in the state of Utah, and we understand that. It has enormous economic impacts, and we do not relish the idea of any public servant having to choose between the economic vitality of their county and potential misconduct by the company that provides that vitality. And the reality is, when we have reported these things, especially before we've commenced an investigation, typically what this does is it just notifies the company that an investigation could be pending. So that was kind of the reason behind us not notifying the sheriff immediately. We did notify the authorities after the New York Times account was published.
When you talk about us, I'm assuming that you're going to be put under oath and ask yourself questions and give answers. What other witnesses would support your, give evidence as to why instruction number 11 should be, your instruction number 11 should be given?
Dr. Andrew Sharrow, who was one of the investigators on this case, Mr. Jonathan Fromeyer, who was one of the investigators on this case and observed the same things we did, and all reached the same conclusion.
People that were there with you that night?
Personally observing the piglets, observing the dead piles, and concluding all effectively. I mean, one of these piglets was so sick, we were convinced he was going to die even if we took her to veterinary care. And we thought we were taking her out just as an act of mercy, that she was going to end up in the dumpster within the next 12 hours or so, but we were just heartbroken by the fact that we saw a suffering piglet unable to stand, being trampled on by the other piglets. So we took her to the vet, and it was kind of a minor miracle. And this testimony will come out, that we did not believe this piglet was going to live. Dr. Tristan Rosenberg will also testify as to the condition of the animals and say that this animal is clearly a liability, and anyone who works at pigs, and she works at pigs every single day of her life, would conclude this animal needs to be separated from the other piglets. They are a danger to the entire herd and need to be euthanized.
That's